I love that you guys are actually taking this seriously and actually researching and interviewing your customers as well.
Sure.
I think reading through your survey, it kind of blew my mind to see how many respondents actually are almost demanding this of their healthcare provider. I think over 80% expect you to be reducing the emissions of your operations.
Sure.
Over 50% expect to be showing up and seeing solar or EV chargers or infrastructure that shows you being more renewable.
And recycling more. Having less of a single-use kind of economy, which is really prevalent within the healthcare space. And of course, safety first, and there's certain parameters around that. But healthcare traditionally has been a single-use type of a economy, and that's an area where feedback from Catalyst Voice, our patient consumer panel, was the highest rated element that they wanted to see us make progress on reducing our waste.
Really? Wow.
And alternative energy, renewable energy was just above the 50% mark. It was close number 2.
Yeah, it is crazy, isn't it? And it's a competitive environment. And so how do you stand out and differentiate? And how do you retain those customers and expand your customer base? Hey everyone, welcome back to an episode of Renewable Rides. And I could not be more proud to be hanging out with our panelists from this morning's discussion. Here we are live from South by Southwest. What are your impressions so far? I'd love for you to just introduce yourselves, your role, what you're passionate about, and then big first impression of South by Southwest.
Cool. I can go first.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm Leigh-Kathryn Bonner. I'm the founder and CEO of Be Downtown, and we install and maintain beehives on corporate campuses to help rebuild sustainable agriculture while simultaneously providing year-round employee engagement and leadership development programming. So we keep about 500 hives up and down the East Coast in 8 different cities for about 130 of America's leading corporations, including Wellstar as well. So that's how I got to hang out with y'all for the day.
So good. And what are you passionate about? What gets you fired up?
I mean, bees. That's always my fun fact. But since we'll be talking about bees a little bit today, I love gardening. That is, I guess it's like in my wheelhouse. And then I am a new mom. So my new passion is my tiny human that is new into the world.
And how old?
9 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So he's a little one.
That's so good. And Eric?
Yeah. So Eric Riesenberg, VoLo Earth Ventures. I'm a managing partner and CFO of the fund, and we specialize in the energy transition, impact, carbon space, and so everything that we touch is all about energy and the reduction of carbon. And why is that important? Because everybody uses stuff that absorbs energy and produces carbon at the moment. How I got into this is that it's a passion project. So you talked about passion, and environmentalism was one of my things since before I even knew what that word was. Just going out into the world and discovering, digging in the backyard, and just loving this earth and understanding that. Took a different pathway for a while in the biosciences world, but then I realized I've done enough saving humans. Now it's time to save the planet so we can live here and be humans. And so that's what I've dedicated my life to now.
So amazing. Love it. Yeah. And Patric?
Well, hey, Patric Rayburn, Head of Engagement for Catalyst by Wellstar, the innovation and venture company of Wellstar. And we just got this incredible group together to talk about sustainability. It's one of the 6 strategic focus areas of Catalyst, which for healthcare systems is not something you typically hear. So working with VECKTA, which is a portfolio company and a strategic partner, Be Downtown, which is a strategic partner and an investment through Engage, and then we're an LP in VoLo Earth Ventures. So just so excited to bring this group together and really elevate some of the work that we're doing in the healthcare space to make the world a little bit greener. So
we'll get
really
you
excited to be here. Oh man. I love scuba diving, and I'm on the dive team at the Georgia Aquarium, and if I could spend more time underwater, I would. That also connects me back to just this amazing place we call home here on Earth.
So good.
Yep.
I've got a story about getting the bend scuba diving that I'll have to tell you sometime. And then you all know me, Gareth. I'm super passionate about hanging out with cool people. And so this has been an incredible few days. South by Southwest, what a crazy event. First time here for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely bonkers how big this is, how sprawly it is. It's almost overwhelming. What are your big standouts so far in terms of things you've enjoyed, heard, seen?
Yeah, I'm still not sure I understand it yet. I think that might take 3 or 4 times of coming here before you really understand what it is. But I think there's a lot of thought leaders here, and that's definitely one thing. So, you could walk into any talk, which I did, walked into many of them, and just all of a sudden you're in the room of an interesting topic with amazing professionals who know the space. So you got the subject matter experts. They're the stuff that I think it resonates to almost anybody because it's all kind of forward-based thinking. They're not super into discovering what happened or whatever. It's about what the future looks like. And so to me, that's been probably the greatest part is just get these perspectives of these experts on what their vision of the future looks like.
Yeah.
I've heard about South by Southwest my whole life, my whole adult career. It's been like, oh, South by Southwest. So it's really awesome. This is my first time here too, and it's awesome to see it. And there's just there's such an energy around it, and there's people that everyone wants to connect and meet one another. And I think that that's a really great thing in our world today of people just wanting to connect over being passionate about whatever they're passionate about. There's something here for you, whether it's film or tech or startups. There's an opportunity to talk to somebody else who's passionate about something similar or different, where you get the chance to learn and develop yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's that difference that I just really resonated with. You get different industries coming together. So tech, of course, music, film, television, and there's something that's really inspiring about different industries coming together and trying to inspire each other to do some good and move forward. I think it's that's one of my big takeaways. I'm so surprised at Rivian being the sponsor of South by Southwest, the exclusive sponsor, EV Maker taking that big of a swing. And I just thought it dovetailed really nicely with the message that we're trying to bring and what we're up to with sustainability. So,
for me, South by Southwest was always this music,
right,
entertainment, video. But who'd have thought we'd have been there talking about sustainability in healthcare? I've heard talks about the heat and how it's going to destroy Texas as we know it today based on energy infrastructure and agriculture and data science, AI, energy consumption, and it all ties into that. Electrification, sustainability, health, wellness. It's kind of amazing how it all layers up.
Well, I think it was you, Eric, that talked about how electricity is just it's critical infrastructure. Am I off there?
No, that's
so
correct.
When you're talking about whether it's data centers or certainly with healthcare, you need the lights to stay on. And I think that's a really interesting through line, like the criticality of electricity and what it can bring and how do we do that sustainably.
Yeah, there was a talk yesterday where they're actually saying maybe as a society we actually have to get comfortable with the fact that energy might not always show up when we expect it to. That's how the rest of the world is operated. And they're saying we've just become so accustomed to it showing up when we want it, flick of a switch, being reasonably affordable.
And how much?
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. What happens if actually maybe it's only there 90% of the time or 95%? How does that impact our lives? And I think one guy made a super interesting point, AI is all a hype right now. He said, we haven't actually proven AI is going to be beneficial yet, but we're sinking all these resources into it. Let's prove it out and then but it consumes so much of everything, energy, water. It's a big play for sure.
Yeah.
But coming back to the panel today, we started with how did we get into sustainability and health and wellness and environment and energy. We'd love to hear how your story started out and how you got into bees.
Yes. So I'm a 4th generation beekeeper, and I grew up in Raleigh-Durham, so in the city. Our family's farm was an hour away in Farmville, North Carolina. Where else do you have a farm but in Farmville? Vol, if you're from there, so Farmville. And I always say, I had all the opportunities that growing up in a city has to offer and the amenities that growing up in a city has to offer, but the privilege of our farm being an hour away. And having my grandfather and my uncle and my mom grew up on that farm, teaching me what it means to love the earth. I love what you said. It's like that's what you want to devote your life to. And my grandfather taught all of the grandkids that. My mom says I loved the farm because I got to play. She had to work it. She was like, they canceled school so we could pick tobacco. Like, very different. Papa let you play with the cows and the horses and the bees. But for me, I realized that people in cities just didn't know anything about agriculture and how you can bring ag back into cities in a really sustainable way. And it doesn't have to be with hundreds of acres for cattle. It can be with literally like 20 by 20 square feet, which is what Wellstar has, of space for beehives. And you can bring that ag back and people can learn and love and enjoy it because people want to do good and they want to live a life where they make a positive impact. And so I loved that the panel name had the word cultivate in it because that's my favorite word, and the root is a deep sense of adoration is what the root of the word means. And we use it in agriculture, we use it in cultivating communities and using that word in a lot of different ways. But when you deeply adore something, you nourish it and you care for it in a way where you watch it grow and develop over time. And so I thought that was a great word to use on this panel, because you do have to nourish the communities and nourish sustainability in a way, because people have to learn about it. They don't, unless you're really in that industry, you don't fully understand it or even know how you get to participate or how you can be invited to play or invited to learn in the world of sustainability.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of a little sad that one of the first questions from the audience was actually like, how do we actually implement something like this in our organization? And that shouldn't be a hard thing to understand. Like, it really should be kind of almost, just change knowledge. Like, they should understand how to make change. Because I think that's one of the things that, we're so used to going down certain roads in our society and accepting those as the only path. But they've gone askew from probably where they should be.
Yeah.
We're smart enough, we're advanced enough as a society to understand sustainability and impact and good versus not good, when it comes to decision making. And everybody should be kind of doing that. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of energy to do wrong to the environment. It takes a little bit more energy to do right, but the impact is so much so. One time it was explained, because I pulled a leaf off a tree, and somebody said, if everybody did that, that tree would be dead. And it kind of stuck with me. It's like, my job is not to pull leaves off, it's to plant trees, right? And so, it takes a little bit more work, but then you're making a huge impact.
Yeah. Well, we ended up having that debrief afterwards about the noisiness, about bees being able to manage conflict and resolution, psychological safety. We'd love to hear the noisy nurse lead in and the bees, how they deal with that conflict and actually adapt to organizations at scale.
Yeah.
Well, I just love the lead into that. It was a lesson we were learning from honeybees, and it's their ability to get to consensus pretty quickly and a lot more efficiently than large-scale organizations. So maybe you lead in with that, and then I'll tag on with the noisy nurses.
So that's biomimicry, and so it's a field of study where you look at naturally occurring processes. And honeybees are Mother Nature's one of their best storytellers. And so when honeybees have conflicting ideas for what is for the greater good of the colony, which is fine to have the conflicting ideas, they will start to butt heads. And as they butt heads, the bees that feel very strongly about, hey, if we go here, this is going to be a new great home for us, and we're going to be safe and we're going to be successful. The bees that went somewhere else and thought they had a good home option too, they'll start to butt heads, and eventually the other bee will say, okay, I trust that you are trying to do what's best for the colony. And so they will they dance. That's one of the ways they communicate, and they will learn the dance that the bee is dancing to say where to go to their new home, and they will start to dance the dance with the other bee to help recruit bees to go to that home. But they can come to consensus of about 35,000 bees in as little as 3 hours to as long as 3 days. But we always say, imagine your corporation and everyone coming to the table with a completely different idea And could your corporation get on board in 3 hours with that idea? And the whole piece of it is there's inherent trust in the beehive. They all are trying to do what's best for the colony because no bee can survive on their own. And then Patric was like, it's the noisy nurse. And I was like, wait, what? What's the noisy nurse?
It's this term that I've heard in and around healthcare where you have a particular institution that has nurses that are so passionate about their patient care that they are willing to raise their hand and be noisy when they see something that needs to be improved or fixed. And because they're noisy, or like those bees kind of butting heads and advocating for a better path forward, patient outcomes actually improve. And I just, I think to find a way to disagree, advocate constructively, and have some trust, and ultimately the stakeholders that you're serving, in this case patients, benefit from the outcome, I think is something we all need to learn from.
We recently actually recorded an episode with 2 leaders in sustainability, and the whole new paper was on the best leaders have figured out how to manage tension, because every decision we make has that degree of tension, doesn't it? And if you can't lead and manage through tension, nothing ends up happening, or you end up with suboptimal outcomes. So it's super interesting how that same theme keeps coming through, and that's the biggest barrier to adoption. But I think a lot of that comes from people being resource constrained, stressed at home, in work, like then having the mental capacity to say, I'm willing to stand up for this and feel good about it and put my neck on the line or my career on the line. It's an interesting challenge.
Speaking about tension, one of my big takeaways from the panel was a moment where both you, Eric and Gareth, were talking about how a project has to pencil first. Like it has to make sense. And both of you spoke really eloquently about the need for the business or the technology to be able to stand on its own. But can you speak to that tension of trying to advocate for alternative on-site energy and navigating some of those tensions within an organization that may be risk averse?
Yeah. I think I was even just reading a LinkedIn post earlier, and the guy was saying, we need to stop talking about climate change and greenwashing and sustainability because people are just burnt on it. How does it actually have an impact on their lives? And we haven't seen a company to date implement a sustainability initiative if it has equal or more costs than what their incumbent solution is today. So we can't just create something, put a green badge on it, and then sell it as being better. It has to actually be cheaper, better, faster, smarter, as well as being sustainable. And then it leads to outcomes. And I think what we've found in our business, we just launched a new strategy module this week because we could tell companies where on-site energy makes sense, what system to build, and the benefits of that, and who to build it with, like the supplier in the market. But the question we kept getting is, why should we do it at scale? And then how should we finance it? Because they're the 2 big missing links, I think, for a lot of companies is holistically, how does this all come together? What's the compounding benefit? And then how do I market that internally in metrics that the organization understands? Cost savings, profitability, ROI, IRR, all these sort of metrics that people use. But then also pulling that through to, there's all these other holistic benefits of lives saved, economic value created across the organization, patient retention, customer retention, shareholder price increase. So how do we tell those stories versus just pushing a sustainability for the sake of sustainability?
Can I throw one more in there?
Yeah.
This is something I bet honeybees have a thing to say about resiliency.
Yeah.
If you're talking about on-site energy, the ability to have reliable backup power for severe weather events or parts of the country that don't have as strong a grid as others, I think that there's more of a message to be had. I think that has a sustainability thread as well as, unfortunately, we see some of these severe weather events that are taking out critical infrastructure. And
more often, too.
How quickly can you get that critical infrastructure back up? And
frequency and severity increasing all the time. And the grid is like 100 years old. People don't realize. We're like where else in our businesses would we rely on a piece of equipment that's 100 years old? Like we wouldn't be using a land telephone line today or a fax machine, but we continue to accept that relying on a pole that's been there 100 years is okay, and it's absolutely not. And without energy, nothing else happens. And I think that's a reality. How do we ensure that the power comes on when we want it and that we have a backup when it doesn't? And that is only achieved through on-site energy. You can only do cost savings, resilience, and sustainability through an on-site energy system that's designed to meet your objectives versus relying on someone else to figure it out for you.
Gotcha.
Yeah. How did you get into this field, Eric?
So my background is both in engineering and accounting and finance. So kind of a hodgepodge of, it's a great mix. I really enjoy it, but I really went to the accounting side first. And then, my passion is entrepreneurialism, period. So I enjoyed business. And when you enjoy business and you have that kind of background, it kind of allows you to really do whatever you can kind of get into any kind of business you really want with, especially with like a CPA background. And so that brought me through some various paths that were not obvious at the time, but it allowed me to experience growing companies, small organizations, large organizations, selling to private equity, dealing with private equity organizations, and then roll-ups. So I got a lot of experience. And then from that, I was able to find an inflection point where I had a realization of, do I want to continue doing this, or is there something else that I'd like to do? And at that point, I said, I want to try something else. And just like, trying to transition to a new system for a hospital, you really have to flip a switch sometimes. And that was the moment where I said, if I don't flip it now, I'm going to be 60 years old doing the same thing I was doing. And so I started looking at different opportunities, and I really enjoyed working with founders and starting up companies and coaching CEOs, which I had been doing for a while. And that led me to working with some universities on small projects. They're trying to get things out there. While I was doing that, my buddy Joe Goodman, who's also one of the managing partners, called me up and said, hey, I'm thinking about this sustainability fund. It's a great topic right now. Everybody's interested in it. It meets our needs. We're both extreme environmentalists. And I was like, let's do it. Let's just do it. And so we both took this leap of faith with some of our other partners, and that was it. We set out to do what we believed to be a first fund of $50 million. It ended up getting all the way to $90 million. And everything that we've put in that portfolio has been exceptional. And, things in VC world, things will fail. And I wouldn't say they failed from, the things that we could have predicted. But even the ones that didn't make it so far were still great companies. And the concepts are amazing. And I hope somebody can pick those things up and take them forward. So it really it's been a passion project.
Yeah.
And I feel really good about being able to do that every day. It's very easy to go to your kids and tell them that, you're a hero and you can still make money.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive. And so that's how I got into it. And that's why I'm going to continue doing this.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
And super proud to have you guys as investors. And then I know you're investors in Catalyst, who are investors in VECKTA. So it triangulates really nicely.
Yeah. I think, the more good groups you can get together in this, we all feed off each other. The synergies are there. It's amazing. And what we've seen from some of our portfolio companies is that we introduce them together and they collaborate, create kind of joint venture status, and create it's like they both had this level of project, and then together it just moves up. And we'd love to see that continue too.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons we're here in Austin, plugging into other ecosystems. We're here at Capital Factory, 4 days worth of programming here, all focused on the startup ecosystem. And we're hoping that those investor conversations, the founder conversations, are helpful both to our portfolio companies and our partners, but the other way around, we may find a breakthrough idea that's here. I joke that the next breakthrough idea is probably going to come from Atlanta, but just in case it doesn't, we want to plug into some of these other ecosystems. There's just some amazing work that's being done here, and we're happy to be reaching out and seeing what else is being talked about, and it may not even be in the health tech sector. Like, I love that we're focusing for this particular effort on a particular vertical that you don't necessarily associate with healthcare all the time. And like, VECKTA is not a health tech company, and it's by design. One of Catalyst's components of its thesis is not all healthcare problems are going to be solved by healthcare solutions. So we're looking across industries, and it's a really helpful place to do that here at South by Southwest.
Yeah, I think that was a brilliant thesis that you guys have created with that, because there's additional scopes to everything, right? You focus on this, but you miss those extra rings of things that affect stuff. And those are the real challenges. You can fix any problem centrally, but if you don't have things around that work, and energy being a huge one, but there's also logistics, there's manufacturing, there are people needs, there are natural resources, and all those things, they all have to support every organization. Yeah, so
just made me think. Gareth and I were listening to another podcast. It was on circularity, trying to create more circular supply chains.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot that we can learn. Maybe like economies can teach us a lesson or two. But I was really inspired by that, thinking through what do you do with all these devices that we're all addicted to, probably more than we should be, but they're everywhere. How do you do that? And I'm sure that could be applied to a number of different things beyond the device. It's certainly applicable in healthcare. But.
Yeah. I love the preventative health angle, though, that Catalyst is coming at this from. There's the immediate, someone comes in with a pain or an issue, but how do you preempt that and create a healthier life for them before they even get to the hospital? Sure. And I like that holistic view. And we were talking about how, we're working with Wellstar right now on deploying a solar system and looking at the economic value. And power in Georgia is super cheap. So on the surface, the economics aren't a slam dunk. But then with a partner, Quantum Energy, we were able to look at holistically what impacts could that have on the community. And it showed that this 750 kilowatt solar system can create 28 years of lives saved in emission reduction,
wow.
0.6 of a species being protected, and $7.4 million worth of holistic economic value by people not getting sick and having those knock-on effects. And so then we're saying, well, what if you scale that out across 100 facilities? Now you've got 2,800 years of life saved. That's 100 people being able to enjoy 3 more years with their kids, $740 million worth of economic value. And so now when you start compounding that out, the knock-on impacts are huge.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest thing for companies in sustainability is how do you learn to tell the story? Because really the story's never been told before. It's still a new enough world of sustainability where it always goes to ROI. What's the ROI?
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to tell the story in a way people can be invited to be part of it and feel like, okay, if we make this decision, yes, it might be, a little bit more of an upfront spend, but people's lives are saved. And it takes time to learn how to tell that new story of not just return on investment, but return on the community, return on the places we love and the people we love. And I love that y'all have some of those numbers now to be able to share, because that's been the hardest thing for Be Downtown is it always comes off as altruistic. And you mentioned this too. And one of the things we always say at Be Downtown is we want to do good and do well. And more and more startups, that's how they're built, is that we want to do good and do well. And then there's these larger corporations that have been here for decades or centuries that are saying we want to do that, but that's not how we originally were founded. And so how do you put that and move that into a culture of an organization? And it takes a lot of time to be able to do it, and a lot of commitment and unwavering commitment. Even if things go wrong with the economy or funding shifts, if you waver on it, you can't actually ever build it. And so to have investment groups that are willing to invest in companies that want to do good and do well, that need the time to figure out how to tell the story the right way, it's an investment in our future and in our world. But once you learn how to tell a story like you just did, it's like, well, duh, why would we not do this?
Yeah. I'd love for you to share with our listeners the story about the guy going to physio, and also just how you have helped penetrate these corporations and start getting them to adopt your ideas? How have you broken down those barriers?
Yes. So it is one of my favorite stories to tell is that the grand opening of the beehives at Wellstar is a whole big carnival, and an older couple walked up and she asked who's in charge. And I said, well, I'm not in charge, but I have the company that is partnering with Wellstar. And she looked at her husband and she said, you need to tell her. I was like, oh my gosh, tell me what? Like, what happened? Did something go wrong? Don't tell Patrick. Like, whatever happened, don't tell Patrick. You can tell me. And he didn't say anything. She said, fine, I'll tell her. And she said he would not go to physical therapy. He didn't want to go. He complained every time. And then all of a sudden, those beehives showed up. And it was right where the overview was of physical therapy, where he would pedal on the bike. And he got to see the beekeepers come out and work the bees one day when he was pedaling on the bike, and would not stop talking about the bees at Wellstar and when he could go back to physical therapy because he wanted to go see the bees again. And that really resonated with me because all of a sudden it's one story, but one of the things that we talk about at Bee Downtown through biomimicry is by herself, one honeybee makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her whole life. But together, a colony can produce over 100 pounds of honey in a matter of months.
Wow.
So if we can work together like a hive, we collectively create the lasting change that we're all proud to be a part of. And it might have just been one person who wanted to get on that bicycle, but it also might be 200 people that want to get on the bicycle now that the bees are there. And oftentimes we overlook a honeybee's individual pollination events, but one honeybee can have 1,200 pollination events in a day. But it's impossible not to step outside and see the whole of the collective impact that's made. Same thing with your investment group. That you might not see one company succeed, but year after year after year of investing in these amazing companies, you won't be able to step outside and not see the whole of the collective impact that comes from investing and staying committed to investing in these corporations and these startups that truly fundamentally want to change the world. Eventually it'll happen. And right now we're looked at as extraordinary companies for wanting to do that. But I would rather be ordinary, right? Because if you that's the new status quo of that's how you build companies and that's the expectation, then we're all ordinary companies at the end of the day. But that's when we become extraordinary, is when we've actually all worked to be able to build companies like that. And that's how you build companies moving forward.
Yeah. I love that.
Here.
Yeah.
I love that you guys are actually taking this seriously and actually researching and interviewing your customers as well. I think reading through your survey, it kind of blew my mind to see how many respondents actually are almost demanding this of their healthcare provider. I think over 80% expect you to be reducing the emissions of your operations. Over 50% expect to be showing up and seeing solar or EV chargers or infrastructure that shows you being more renewable.
And recycling more. Having less of a single-use kind of economy, which is really prevalent within the healthcare space. And of course, safety first, and there's certain parameters around that. But healthcare traditionally has been a single-use type of a economy, and that's an area where feedback from Catalyst Voice, our patient consumer panel, was the highest rated element that they wanted to see us make progress on reducing our waste.
Really? Wow.
And alternative energy, renewable energy was just above the 50% mark. It was close number 2.
Yeah, it is crazy, isn't it? And it's a competitive environment. And so how do you stand out and differentiate? And how do you retain those customers and expand your customer base?
Sure. And get past some of those buzzwords.
Yeah.
Right? Like greenwashing and alternative, if we can maintain safety and resiliency and perhaps save some money from an operational standpoint, it starts to paint a pretty compelling picture rather than just focusing on particular buzzwords that have been completely played out, and frankly consumers and patients are just kind of over it, glossed over, and they're not paying attention. And so how do we, to your point, how do you tell that story in a more compelling way on reasons why some of these components make sense, and take the politics just off the table? Some of these things just make sense because they make sense.
It's almost the cheapest insurance policy. We pay millions into these insurance policies as businesses, and actually we never get anything out of it until something goes wrong. But what if you can put in an on-site energy system or a beehive and you can create a new customer or retain a new customer? And like, it's always paying you dividends. Like in the on-site world, we're saving money, we're creating resilience, and we're reducing emissions. And when you're not using it because you need it for an outage, it's saving you money every day. It's like the cheapest insurance policy you could ever sign up for.
No, I've shared this anecdote, and cut this if you'd like.
No,
But my wife is born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We were there for New Year's, and they had an island-wide power outage that lasted several days. And when I talk about resiliency, I mean, life comes to a standstill when you don't have power. Like some of the traffic lights were just not even blinking like we have here in the mainland, like just out, like main thoroughfares, like no lights. And so from a perception standpoint, it was so just frustrating and jarring to see, like my expectation here in the States, you have a power outage, it's, electricity's out for an hour, maybe two, and in a severe weather event. This was not a severe weather event, just, had a grid failure, and it was a multi-day event. So I think from a resiliency standpoint, or the insurance policy kind of standpoint, like how do we make sure that the systems that we rely on for everything from certainly healthcare and hospitals were certainly prioritized to get back online faster, but the economic hit that the island takes when people can't go and enjoy their New Year's festivities is real. And so I'd love to see that continue to be improved for sure from a resiliency standpoint.
Just last week alone, 98% of Chile without power. Like the whole grid went down, which is unbelievable, isn't it? You think that this is just island nations or developing nations, but this is happening in first world countries, and you just don't expect it. But
and you brought it up that there might be a time where you only get it 90% of the time, and there's the quote, the worth of water when the well runs dry.
Yeah.
We've never watched the well run dry really with power, at least I haven't, and like if a big storm knocks it out, but if there's all of a sudden you can have it for X amount of hours a day and then you're not going to get it for a few because of just the infrastructure's not there, you'll learn the worth of electricity. But right now it's always there, so it's hard. And that's a lot of things with sustainability is you're trying to say we have to take care of the earth, we have to, because if this goes away, but nobody's ever had the issues of it actually going away. They've never felt the pain of the well running dry before. And so it's hard to tell that story for people to really resonate with because they haven't experienced it before. And if it gets to the point where they experience it, then all of a sudden everyone's going to be like, we got to figure out this energy problem. What's going on? But we're never fully displaced by it. In the United States specifically, with a lot of sustainability-based issues.
There's a crazy discussion yesterday where it's talking about the south of the US and how it's warming up. And they were saying, as it warms up, not only does that impact the capacity of the grid, but more people then turn on their air conditioning units. So you've got this rising energy need at a point where the grid is at its most vulnerable. And so then the power goes off, and unlike in the cold where you can put on a few layers, you're now in sweltering heat, you've got no air conditioning, and then as the environment warms up, you lose access to water, so you have to pump water from further away. To pump the water, you need more energy. And so they painted this like really scary compounding story, which then leads to mass migration because people literally can't survive. And it's kind of crazy when you actually think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Climate refugees.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a term that's becoming a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it could be, we've seen it out west when water does run dry and those towns are abandoned, right? But we haven't seen it where it's when energy runs dry.
Yeah.
What happens then? Because that's a reality in the future.
And that's a component where if you look at it from a resiliency standpoint, yes, we need the lights on, but as you add massive needs for things like data centers or for electric vehicles, et cetera, the demand increases. Like, how do we make sure that we have the infrastructure to take advantage of all these things that we hope are so promising for what can happen next? I mean, certainly with predictive analytics and what AI could represent to healthcare, huge health benefits. But how do we make sure that electricity would be there to actually empower and enable those data centers to deliver on those hopeful and optimistic benefits for that kind of technology. So.
Well, the nice thing is people are talking about it. That's the start, right? When people get together and they start coming up with these ideas, there will be something that kind of whittles its way to the top. And then that becomes the new focus. And companies like us invest in it. Companies like Gareth show up and support those industries. And that's how you make real change. So, we need those companies to show up.
Yep.
We need those ideas to converge. The solar and wind generation technologies are great, but they are not 24/7, and that's one of the problems. So we're defaulting back to coal and natural gas. Mostly natural gas is kind of the default, but there are other things coming together. We were talking about this earlier that one of the talks I heard here was on nuclear, and especially in the micronuclear environment, putting these up. And that might be what we see, these high demand facilities like hospitals or data centers may create their own energy source that's clean and abundant and hopefully very safe. And then that can actually supplement the demand from the surrounding areas when it's not at its peak.
Yep.
They're going to oversize these things. And that might be the new way of electricity working, where your utility provider is doing what a lot of utility providers are doing right now, which is buying from a lot of different independent sources. And we might see that increase more, less of them owning and operating the plants. They might just own and operate the transmission systems.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to need a smarter, stronger grid.
We definitely need a smarter, stronger grid. Yeah.
So just to start wrapping up, in terms of asks of business leaders, what would be the biggest ask based on either what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you've experienced?
Man, that's a platform to stand on and preach about. But I think just what are you doing with the funds that you have? How are you doing good and doing well? And there's really awesome groups. There's really awesome businesses that you can work with and partner with to. It doesn't have to change the whole world, but it might change someone's world to participate and to care a little bit more, and for them to feel like their employer cares a little bit more in a place where people spend the majority of their life. And so how can we focus on sustainability? And sustainability is almost a buzzword now, right?
Yeah.
But it is so important. If you bring it back down to like the storytelling piece of what sustainability is, I think that's a really great way for large organizations to approach it. So you make your mark on the world, but hopefully that mark is a positive one, like you were talking about. And yeah, I think that's
great.
That's my platform. And get bees.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bees, please.
Eric?
I think we're moving into a very exciting time where the generation that is taking over most of the decision making is now the millennial generation, and I think they're very smart. I'm a millennial, so I can say they're very smart. They grew up with technology at their fingertips. All information, so they're able to really understand things that maybe past generations really needed more of that foundational system. They wanted to make sure that they always had food, water, and shelter, and that was really their core belief. But then we've moved past that a little bit into kind of an understanding that science and technology and even higher level thinking, like how do I feel about this? Psychology and other things are really starting to take place. So with the older generation, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then if something's pending, like wait till disaster happens and then we can fix it because we're amazing at innovating and doing all this stuff. But I think the new generation has a different thought on that. And now that they're becoming the decision makers for larger institutions, they are able to kind of get ahead of these problems and say, no, let's not wait till the disaster happens. Let's map out what we want to see this look like. And they're starting to create things like sustainability plans and, these concepts of group thought or bringing in like surveys like the Catalyst Group did and really use that to engage thought leadership at every level of an organization. And so I see that as being a great thing. We just need to give a lot of options and make sure those options are sustainable, and that they have good vendors, solid people who can make these things actually perform like they're supposed to perform. Once you do that, that's natural. The decision making that's new thought is going to say, yeah, let's go a little bit above and beyond. Let's try to make something that's not only going to be good for us but good for everyone.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to that. It is just, we're at the beginning of that. The people who are in their early 40s are the millennials right now. And if you think about where that is, it's mid-level to upper-level career level. These are the guys who are now starting to become decision makers.
Yep.
Different set of values. And so I see that as where we're going to see a lot of impact coming soon.
It's inspiring.
How about you?
Man, I would say, humble brag on Wellstar, just continued support to raise the dialogue on topics like this in places that are beyond just Georgia. That's where Wellstar is from a clinician and client base focused, and we're here in Austin looking for breakthrough ideas, and that's novel. We're beyond the borders of where we're directly doing business, and Wellstar's mission is to improve the health and well-being of every patient it serves, and the majority of the startups that Catalyst has invested in are outside of Georgia. And many of them have products in market and are serving patients. And so it may be a bridge too far, but through those investments, we're improving the health and well-being of patients that are in multiple states beyond Georgia. And I think that having that vision and the support to continue to look for breakthrough ideas and seek investment and giving them opportunity to pilot and refine their product and solution to hopefully increase chances of success, I think is a brilliant model for encouraging innovation and ultimately delivering on that mission and helping to serve patients in a better way, more efficient way for years to come. So, yeah, continued support.
Yeah, I love it. And I think for me, just to round out that, because I love everything you guys have said, I think we've always had change in our lives and our businesses, but change is happening faster than ever. And I think the companies who have ridden those innovation cycles have been the ones that have won and led and dominated the market. And this is really the opportunity of a generation to adopt robotics, manufacturing, AI, electrification of everything, control our own energy, and do that in a super sustainable way by also thinking out the box and figuring where can I combine that with a beehive to actually have a huge impact. And I think this is about having a positive impact on your business, on your community, on your society, on your employees, while also delivering a return on investment to everyone. So for me, it would be get after it, stick your head out, embrace that psychological safety that's hopefully created within your environment, and take a risk. But the reality is they're not risks, because we've proven that the technology's there, the capital's there. It's now how do you convince yourself with data, insights, intelligence to go and make confident and informed decisions? But I'd like to finish with one final question, if you're good with it. So either for you personally or for your business, you will have been successful when ...
I'll let somebody else go first this time.
So in the fund world,
Yeah.
it's about returns to investors, right? If our thesis is one in which says that, you can have VC returns but still make impact and have sustainability and all these other things boiled into it, and you don't have to sacrifice that return. When we issue that return, that thesis is proven, and hopefully that moves to a much broader scale of this type of investment, and people will feel a lot more comfortable bringing new money into this kind of world.
Yeah.
Because that's what really, money moves change.
Yeah.
And so we will know when people don't see it as we're making impact investing. We want them to see it as we're making good investments.
Yeah.
When we can stop talking about things like that and putting those green premiums and greenwashing and the term green gone.
Yeah.
When the good investments are the right investments, that's when we've done real well.
Yeah, that's amazing.
This is a hard one, man. I'm gonna be journaling about this for a while, but something, Eric, you said about that transition of the millennials now coming into a position of influence and being decision makers. I love that baby Oakley is here, and thinking about my son, that transition will happen when our again, right? And so, if I were to come to an answer, it would be when I say Luca, my son, he's now in that position of influence, and I would say success would be me feeling like we've done enough to set that next generation up for leadership and influence that we can go be scuba instructors in the Virgin Islands. We've done enough that generation is ready to take up the leadership and move it forward. I would say that's success.
Nice. And for me, it's all about energy sovereignty at scale. Everyone should be able to own their own energy destiny, have access to clean, affordable, and reliable power, such that energy is abundant and we can all thrive. Bring us home.
I'll bring it with a bee analogy.
Love
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to tag off of Patric here. I mentioned the honeybee makes a 12th of a teaspoon of honey in her whole life. She hasn't lived long enough to see the nectar she brings in from flowers turned into honey. It has to be dehydrated to less than 18.6% water content. It'll never go bad. Honey is shelf stable forever. Her entire life's work, because of that, is for the next generation. So everything she does is for the greater good of what's coming after her. And it is, it's altruistic. I want to see the colony survive, not only survive, but thrive once I'm gone. And so I think for me, that's success. It might be a small little piece of, the greater world of this girl that put beehives places. But if that ripple effect can impact other people in a way where their lives change, and then their children's lives change, and then the story just compounds into something bigger than you ever thought it could be. Everyone's stories do that. And so I think for me, I already feel like I have hit the jackpot in life of getting to do what I love every day and getting to invite people into that story with me. So if I could just retire from Be Downtown one day, just work till I can't work anymore and get to continue doing this, I'll feel like that was a success in my life.
What a beautiful way to finish. South by success. Thank you all. You're all amazing. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We receive a lot of questions from business leaders around the world wanting to learn more about the energy transition, what is possible, and where to start. So to help you stay informed and up to date on best practices, opportunities, risks, and success stories, we created an industry newsfeed at VECKTA.com/news with all our podcasts, blogs, and newsletter. Check it out and connect with Dan, myself, and the VECKTA team to learn more. Cheers and have a good one.